Catherine West.
Thank you very much, Mr Deputy Speaker, and it's a real delight to follow the member for York Central, who I know has such a deep understanding of housing and the problems that so many of our constituents face, from the basics around mould and infestations right through to the complexities of leasehold properties, cladding and all of that. And it was a very, very good speech, so thank you for that. And indeed there are some very good themes in the Queen's speech. The question is going to be on the detail and how much we managed to achieve in this parliamentary session. I do welcome this opportunity for the Queen's speech and the Platinum Jubilee celebrations, Mr Deputy Speaker. I don't know if you're going to be at any street parties, but you'd be very welcome to come along to the Cecil Park Street Party if you're available on the 4-day holiday. No one's mentioned that today, but I think that's actually it's probably the best thing the government's done in the last few years, to give us those extra few days to enjoy it, and a bit of a boost for the local economy. And a bit of celebration as well that we've got through a pretty tough time with COVID, and that we're hopefully at the other side of that. The other really positive elements which have a lot of potential in the Queen's speech are the modern slavery bill, which the member for Maidenhead spoke at length about in her speech, the possibility of civil penalties for organisations that do not comply with the modern slavery requirements. And of course we've also got a lot of potential with the Economic Crime and Corporate Transparency Bill, and hopefully that will contain the long overdue Companies House reform, which we know is key to cracking down on the kleptocracy which was so evident when the President Putin began his terrible assault on Ukraine earlier in the year. I want to focus in my short remarks on the context of this Queen's speech, coming straight out of an election period, and I wonder if that's why the benches opposite are completely empty except for one whip and one front bench member. Bit of wind out of the sails perhaps following the 500-odd losses at local government level, but who is to say, I'm not sure why it's so empty on the other side. But the context of the Queen's speech is pretty desperate. We are on the verge of a recession and we cannot afford to be complacent. We want to see an emergency budget as well as this Queen's speech, and it was a little bit unsure as to whether the Prime Minister mentioned that there was going to be a statement from the Chancellor, or whether that was then ruled out by his spokesperson at number 10 Downing Street. But if anyone can clarify, please do intervene. But I was surprised also that in the Prime Minister's short words about the Queen's speech, Peppa Pig didn't make any appearance, because I thought at one point, with the speed at which he delivered his remarks, I thought Peppa Pig might just accidentally pop out of his mouth as he was speaking. It felt like one of those speeches. I don't know if anybody else shared the sentiment, listening to how it revved up and then slowed down again. I thought it could have perhaps gone into that. And speaking of Peppa Pig, I noticed that the CBI today has said that the Queen's speech is not good enough, or the measures, any of the economic measures which have been proposed are not good enough. And that is a real pity, because the Chancellor's response during COVID actually was a correct tripartite response between government, the CBI and the TUC. Sadly, the TUC has severely criticised the Queen's speech for not having an employment bill where we could address the lack of security in our workplaces, the vexed issue around flexibility at work and who should be in work and who should have the right to work at home, maternity provision, pregnancy, adoption provision, all those things which we could have put into that speech to improve our workplaces, and also to address the issue of retention, because we know a lot of good workplaces do not know why they can't retain staff. So that's a real missed opportunity. The other missed opportunity, of course, is on the environment. We really want to be turbocharging the insulation of all of our homes, particularly those of us who have very, very old Victorian stock, which is expensive to retrofit but desperately needs to be tackled. One of the members who spoke earlier spoke about the failed green New Deal in 2010, which was a tragedy, and then of course the second scheme, which failed after the 2017 election, and time after time we've had schemes which have failed. If local government, and I was really pleased to hear the member for Newark praising the role of local government during COVID, if local government was just given cash to get all of their own stock up to scratch, we would be doing a lot for the environment, we would be doing a lot for fuel poverty, and we would be doing a lot to save people's bills. So it's those sorts of basic schemes which in the end cost less, because we've had two failed schemes which cost a lot but didn't do very much either for the environment or for the consumer. That would be a real way of getting things achieved again. On the food poverty side, we've heard a lot of contributions on that. What we all want to see in our constituencies is fewer queues at food banks and people being able to afford, with their earnings, to work a decent week's work and be able to put food on the table. I don't know why that is so difficult to do, but I do know that by the end of the year, when inflation hits 10%, we're going to be seeing even more people at food banks queuing, and that is not a sight that any of us wish to see. That, of course, will be exacerbated by the situation of a drop by 30% in Ukraine's exports, particularly around cooking oil and around wheat, and we know that that is going to increase hardship on our tables. And we really need the government to step in and take responsibility and to roll out a program that addresses that lack. We also need to have much more innovation in our industrial strategy, and I was very disappointed to see last year the government cancelling the industrial strategy. I think that was a real missed opportunity. For example, manufacturing. Why don't we just fund the manufacturing of more PPE? We know that we need it because we need to have a stock ready. We have plenty of centres like Leicestershire or parts of London, parts of the Midlands, where we could just begin that, fund it, and then it would pay for itself over time. You know, let's get innovation and let's have a Brexit dividend. Let's do that and be creative. In addition, of course, we have the productivity challenge, and this comes back to the fact that we have far too many people in FE or who are in low-quality courses in FE, because we still haven't put right the 50% cut to FE from 2010, and that desperately needs to be addressed. It was good to hear others speaking about the apprenticeships and the way that many of the apprenticeship schemes have failed. The other point, of course, is on public services, and it's really essential that we tackle the lack of GP appointments, and that we look at the NHS record waiting lists for doctors and nurses. We simply do not have enough health practitioners working in the health service. We've been promised mental health, a parity of esteem for mental health for years, and we still haven't got it, I don't believe, in this sketch out of bills, but we will continue to keep fighting for people who have mental health problems, for those to be considered just as seriously as physical health problems. The supersized classrooms issue, we know that last time Labor came in 1997, it immediately reduced the classroom size and kids started to learn better. We need to do that now. Let's not wait until Labor has to come in and do it again. Let's just do it now, because we know it works. We're still only spending what we spent per child, what we spent in 2010 on education. That is holding our productivity back severely, and we need to address that urgently. And finally, victims of crime. I'm very pleased it's mentioned in the Queen's speech, but I want to see what that actually means. Far too many victims of crime are not being supported, are just getting desperate that our justice system is not working for them. And I will be following that detail very closely, because we know just 1 in 35 victims of rape, for example, ends up with a successful charge, and that has absolutely got to stop. My time is up, Mr Deputy Speaker, but we can revisit those issues. You're shaking your head. All I would say in conclusion, because I know that there's 1 or 2 more speakers to come, is to say that we have had a missed opportunity today. We've had a very interesting and engaging set of speeches from the government benches, but perhaps not attached to what the reality is in our own constituencies, whether it was the Northern Ireland Protocol, which we had a bit of a debate on, whether it's about apprenticeships and young people, whether it's about manufacturing in some of our hubs, whether it's about the housing crisis, which the member for York Central mentioned. There are so many areas where really it could have been addressed by the front bench earlier on the government benches, and yet it didn't seem to occur to the Prime Minister to talk about the pressing issues. And I wonder, in conclusion, coming back to my first point about the empty benches on the other side, whether that was the disconnect which did lead to the 500 losses of council seats, because in the end, in a democracy, if you don't talk about the issues which matter to working people, you don't end up winning an election. Thank you.